Okay, sir. So
Yes.
on my count, three, two, one. Please start, sir. We are live.
All right. Good evening, friends, colleagues from all over the country. Dear faculty, Dr. Shalmi, Dr. Hemchand, Dr. Alok, our friend Manish Trambak from Zydus. Welcome to this yet another episode of Gujarat Pediatrician WhatsApp group, along with the Surendranagar District Pediatric Doctors Association. Today's topic is on endocrinology, but we are not discussing the entire endocrinology. We are just focusing on growth chart, which I think is the bread and butter for the pediatrician, because as the title for today's talk says, that growth chart, it increases or it helps you to grow your practice, because if you really pick up something on the growth chart, parents feel very happy, and and so on and so forth. So with that preamble, welcome to everyone, and I would request Dr. Ramesh Bajania to introduce the faculty, and then I will request Dr. Trambak to say a few words about Zydus, because Zydus has been giving an unrestricted scientific grant by providing us this web stream platform, as well as archiving the entire session later on the YouTube channel of Gujarat Pediatricians. So over to you, Dr. Ramesh.
Yes. Good evening, respected seniors and dear friends. So we are here with yet another useful session, considering the common pediatrician into mind. And today's session, Dr. Nitin Bhai has done in such a way that almost all important issues are covered. And most of the colleagues, they have a mental block as far as growth charts are concerned. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar sir said that the one who doesn't use growth chart is not a pediatrician, I would say. So what I have seen in my practice, that the most of the pediatricians are so busy in their practice, and they think that grossly they evaluate that weight is okay and height is okay. But after this session, I mean, everyone will feel that to use growth chart is such a easy thing, and it can sensitize to you about upcoming endocrine problems at an early stage, so we can intervene. So today we have got three very eminent, very good speakers, and Dr. Nitin Bhai is very specific about selecting the faculties based purely on merit. Dr. Shalmi Mehta is from Ahmedabad, and she is a known face in all conferences as far as endocrinology is concerned. Dr. Alok Sardesai is at Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai, and excellent orator as well as academician. Dr. Hemchand is from Chennai. So I welcome all three speakers, and I thank them for devoting their time for Gujarat Pediatrician WhatsApp group along with Surendranagar District Pediatrics Association. Over to Trambak.
We also, before that, Trambak, we also welcome very senior pediatrician Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa from Bengaluru, Dr. Srinivas Kasi, my old friend and my vaccine guru from Bengaluru again, and we have Dr. Zalil Ahmed, EB member 2024. So welcome. Yeah, Trambak, unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity. I'm Dr. Chandra from Zydus Vaccines, and quickly walk you through our short corporate presentation. So, as all of you are aware of, Zydus is a well-integrated player, proven and has a proven track record with over 23,000 people. Right now, it's almost over 25,000 people getting impacted across four continents. 300 plus generic products, 20 plus active discovery programs, more than 1,400 research scientists working day in and out, launching products with unmet healthcare needs. Some of them on the screen, like Lipagreen, Exemptia, Vaxiflu-4, Twinrab, Balipsa, Zycov-D, and Oxemia, to meet unmet healthcare demands. If you see specifically Zydus vaccines, the R&D and development capabilities of the Zydus vaccines started with acquiring Etna Biotech back in the day, and then forming all these units, the biological unit, the recombinant facility, the bacterial vaccine facility, the live viral facility, and the inactivated vaccine facility. So our journey started from typhoid and Hep B vaccine, then the Vaxirab N, then Vaxiflu S. Back in the day was duck embryo vaccine, then Vaxiflu 4. Vaxicare was launched, and then Zyvac PCV, that is the typhoid conjugate vaccine, followed by Zyvac MMR, Twinrab, and so on and so forth. So a few of our initiatives, the VCare initiative, which is to improve immunization rate in the country, along with all the brands on the screen. We would also like to reiterate on the fact that our inactivated influenza vaccine now comes with 25G Terumo needle, which is a universal solution catering to all age groups. So thank you so much and happy Navratri to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Trambak. We will start this session right away. Let me share my PPT. Okay, you are able to see my. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. So welcome to this yet another episode of Gujarat Pediatricians along with the SDPDA. As I said on the growth charts, it helps you grow your practice. And in the past, we have had several sessions which are archived, as I said, on the Gujarat Pediatrician YouTube channel. So you can see the first one this year we started with the labs in hematology, which has crossed more than 2,200 views. And then we had on TB, we had on the JIA, that is the juvenile idiopathic arthropathy, and then we had two on vaccine, one nephrology, and this is on endocrinology. And each of them, as you can see, over last 4 to 5 months has crossed more than 1,200 to almost 2,000 views. Today we have this panelists which have been already introduced by Dr. Bajania, who is my co-moderator. So we have Dr. Shalmi Mehta. Very interesting fact about Dr. Shalmi is that Dr. Shalmi is also, the sister is Dr. Ruchi, and both of them are pediatric endocrinologists. Both of them practice together. Both of them sound very similar, so something which very unique. Dr. Alok, of course, works with me at Hinduja, and Dr. Hemchand Prasad has been very active in the Mehta Hospital in Chennai. So our journey for the growth chart actually started when we were students, and we used to use this NCS chart. You know, these are the charts from CDC USA. In fact, they were almost since 1960 not changed for many years. Of course, now they've changed the charts accordingly. But those charts were made on children who are top fed, and many of them were bottle fed. And we know top fed, bottle fed babies in the Western countries used to be a little more heavy. So it was very depressing to see that most of our children were malnourished if you put them on the CDC chart. So there was a need felt that we have to have our Indian charts. And I mean, I don't take too much pride, but in 2005, when I was the president-elect, I was making my action plan for the 2006 when I was the president of the IAP. One of the important guideline, of course, you would have seen this guidebook which was given, which had 15 consensus guidelines which were given that time through UNICEF free to all the members. One of them was on the guidelines on the growth monitoring, and I had requested Dr. Baman Khadilkar that time, along with Dr. K. Agarwal, who is the father of growth charts in India, to take up this challenge. And they took up this challenge, and we had this 2 days consensus meeting whereby we made these IAP growth charts, and they were then published in the Indian Pediatrics as the IAP growth charts. Essentially, what we did was we smoothened out the data which was provided very generously by Dr. K. Agarwal and made the chart from birth to 18 years for height, weight, head circumference, etc. After that, of course, when we made this in 2006, the data by Dr. Ken Agrawal was already more than 10 years old. So it was not truly representing what's happening in Indian children in the 2010, 2015. So subsequently in 2015, when my great friend Dr. Yevli took over as the president, he continued these efforts of the IAP to upgrade the chart. And by then, Dr. Khadilkar and many other from the endocrine group had already made 5 to 18 years Indian charts, which were like very recent at time. And WHO already had come out with 0 to 5 and 5 to 18 years growth chart from a global perspective, of which India was one of the countries which contributed to the data. So we made WHO charts as the 0 to 5 years and 5 to 18 years our own India chart, and made into one chart 0 to 18, with knowing well that first 5 years is the WHO chart. And then when Dr. Bakul Pare, another group friend of mine, was president of the IAP, he with Dr. Khadilkar further smoothened and made this IAP charts essentially the same growth charts, but made it pediatrician friendly by incorporating the mid-parental height column inside, and also the BMI in the left upper corner. And we'll show you all those charts later. So basically, it kept on improvising over the years. And now we have this extended growth charts for Indian children. Again, Dr. Khadilkar's group has published article very recently. We have height velocity charts which are available for Indian children from 5 to 17 years. Again, we have Dr. Khadilkar's group taking the lead for the same. And we have this growth monitoring in Indian children as a concept, whereby you can see Dr. Hemchand Prasad, who is one of the faculty today, he with Dr. Vaman Khadilkar wrote this general article. So very rich efforts have gone into making growth chart as perfect as possible, as Indianized as possible, and make it more popular through our journey, like how we are doing today by having this type of activity. So if I can sum up, starting from CDC chart when we were residents in 1980s to 1990s, first IAP growth chart based on Dr. K. N. Agrawal's data in 2006, further Indian children's recent data for 5 to 15 and adopting WHO for 0 to 5 in 2015, WHO growth chart 0 to 5 as I said, then I showed you velocity chart and the the pediatrician friendly chart. And then we have charts for Turners, for Downs, for preterm, for achondroplasia, and now we have recently the intergrowth charts for preterm, which are different from the Fenton chart that we used in past, and all that we will discuss in the coming slides. So, Dr. Alok, you have so many charts now. Which one to use?
Yeah, so we recommend the use of the IAP 2020 growth chart, as you just mentioned, which are the pediatrician friendly charts, as they are also known as. It has the growth curve right from birth to 18 years. It has the MPH tool and the BMI tool for easy estimation for the pediatrician in a busy OPD, so that all children are actually plotted with all those aspects. Particularly in children under 5 years, you should use the IAP adapted WHO charts, which also allows you to monitor the head circumference. And in preterms, we use the intergrowth 21 chart. We've moved on from using the Fenton's chart to now using the intergrowth 21 chart.
All right. Dr. Bajane, you can take over from here.
Yes, yes. Now, Shalmi Ben, why we should use growth charts regularly? Because many a times what happens that parents feel so anxious because there are no exact levels. So in case of minor alterations on subsequent visits or sometimes seeing child in lower percentiles, they become anxious. So is it necessary to use regularly?
So we all know that the growth of a child is a very dynamic process, right? Starting from birth, going through that first 3 years of rapid growth, then a steady growth of around 4 to 6 centimeter per year, and then hitting puberty, gaining that fast height velocity and the final height, right? And every child grows at a separate rate also. So growth charts help us to know and compare the child's growth to the peer population. So what are these growth charts? These are basically reference growth charts. So we know how children are growing in a particular area, and then we are comparing the child of our growth to that particular area's children's growth. So that is why these are the reference growth charts. Now we know that there can be just minor alterations on the visits, and then the parents may become anxious that, ma'am, the line is not moving, it is on the last line, and why are you not doing anything for it? So I think that is a visual representation. It is for us to make them understand that even if the child is on the last line, it continues to follow on the last line. And that is very, very important. At the same time, if on the chart, the line is going straight or, the lines are being crossed, then you can show to the parents that, look, something is happening which is not correct, and we need to investigate this particular child, right? So growth charts are they can be very, very reassuring to the parents also. So rather than creating that anxiety, if we just take a moment to explain, what are we actually measuring and plotting on the charts, it's going to be really, really reassuring to the parents. And they're only going to, see the chart and be reassured that, okay, fine, my child's growth is all right, and nothing has to be done for it. So I think we should use the growth charts very, very regularly. Most of the conditions, whether you're treating a chronic condition, the end point is always a good growth. So say even if you're treating a kid of nephrotic syndrome or a renal failure, if your child's growth on the growth chart is going well, that means that disease is under control. So, it's like you can show to the parents that, look, everything is under control. You don't have to worry. So that is why we need to use growth charts very, very regularly, even if we have a busy OPD practice.
Correct.
Perfect, Dr. Shalmi. So, I always say that you take weight every time the child comes to you. I mean, if the weight is grossly getting altered, you change your machine because probably there's something wrong with the machine. In a well child, if the weight comes down by half a kilo, your machine is faltering. So very well said. Okay, next question.
And
Yes.
moreover, Shalmi ma'am, what happens that most of the time grandmother feels the child is not gaining weight. So you can also reassure her that no, everything
Yes.
is normal.
So we have
Right.
been
grandmother
teaching
is gaining
proper
weight.
growth charts, and I think all my parents know growth chart better than maybe some of others. So
But we
I
are
think
talking
that
about general pediatrician, Dr. Shalmi. You, of course, I mean, you can't live without growth chart. Okay, next question, Dr.
Yes,
Bajaj.
yes, Amchan sir. Now, in conference, we see that there are so many sophisticated gadgets as far as weight and height is concerned. So, how to take weight? I mean, to use electronic machines or calibrations?
Thank you so much, sir. I think the stage is set very nicely with the key message that growth is a barometer of well-being in a child. So, on that background, taking weight, I think as pediatricians, all of us should definitely read the WHO study, which describes the process which all pediatricians should follow on taking weight. Very beautifully describes. Taking weight seems something which even an office secretary does, but I think the stepwise approach is very important to give an accurate assessment of the weight, which has so much implications for the health of the child. What the WHO manual tells us is very clear. Below 2 years, you would have to use, below 2 years and above 2 years, you would have to use a calibrated electronic weighing scale that is able to measure weight to an accuracy of 0.1 kilograms. I think that is the statement that is mentioned. So very beautifully they have mentioned that we have to use electronic weighing scales and it should be able to measure to the nearest 0.1 kilograms. Having said that, below 2 years, you would either have to use a small baby scale where the baby could be weighed alone, or you could use a tarred weighing scale as well. And about 2 years, if the child is not agitated, you would allow the child to stand separately and measure the weight. And if the child is agitated, then probably again the tarred weighing scale, tarred method would have to be taken into account. The manual
So
also.
just one question, Dr. Hemchand. Do you need to calibrate these weighing machines every
Yes,
6 months, every
exactly.
1 year?
I think I'll come to that. Regarding the weighing of babies, they have said that you can take the help of a blanket. Preferably, the baby should be weighed in the naked state. And as far as calibration is concerned, I think the WHO manual and the Intergrowth manual definitely recommend periodic calibration of all the anthropometric tools, height, weight, both as well. But what they say is you would have to use known weights and have to ensure that the weighing machine is calibrated. And aluminum rods are mentioned in the manual. Standard length and standard height aluminum rods would have to be periodically used and calibrated. Every state has its own statutory requirements. So in our state, weighing scales would have to be calibrated in the labor office periodically. That is what is told for us. And regarding measurement of, there is no standardized rods that are available as such as of date to calibrate the instruments which are used to measure the height. So I think a reputed brand would have to be probably used. And the WHO manual also gives a very beautiful recommendation that the batteries have to be checked periodically. And in their manual, they have given how frequently they have to check the batteries. They say once in about 4 days or 4 months, like that they have given. But I think that depends on the make of the machine that we are using. But although it's very, what they have said is the measurements become less accurate when the life of the battery is coming down. That is what they tend to say. And regarding measurement of length, again, the WHO and Intergrowth have given a very beautiful stepwise approach. You have a fixed head end and you have a mobile foot end. The baby, after washing the hands, removal of the shoes and the socks, a baby should be placed on the infantometer. The mother would hold the head against the head end, and the pampers would preferably have to be removed. The baby should not be arching. The shoulder should touch the board, and minimal pressure on the knees, and the record the length to the nearest completed unit. I think that is what is mentioned, completed unit. If it is between 63 and 64, I think the completed unit would have to be taken into account and recorded as the length.
Perfect.
And at what age do we have to measure length? Below 2 years, it says use length, and above 2 years, the recommendation is to use height. As all of us know, there is a point, the WHO study has told us that there is a 0.7 centimeters difference between length and height in the intermediate age group. So I think if we have to use the length and height in vice versa because of logistic considerations, I think we'll have to factor that 0.7 centimeter difference while plotting, because the charts represent the length in the first 2 years and height beyond 2 years of age. And this 0.7 has been validated also on the WHO charts. So I think
when you transition from one to another, the parents suddenly feel, "Arey, my child has become short when he stands." But that's usual, and we need to caution them before.
caution them. I think the challenge about weight comes in with children with disability. How do you measure their weight? That is where the problem comes. Of course, there are specialized tools, equations that are available for children who are on contractures, who are on permanent wheelchairs, etc. You may have to use specialized equations to extrapolate their weight based on segmental measures or the mid-arm circumference.
Correct. But I think that's going to be very, very rare. Most of the time, the pediatrician don't even take good height and weight of a normal child who comes to their clinic. I think that's the whole idea, to train them. Okay, the next question.
Yeah, now Alok sir, how to take height? Will a simple height meter do in day-to-day practice, or sophisticated devices, as I said, displayed in conference as necessary?
Yeah, so the ideal way to measure is take a standing height with the help of a rigid stadiometer. And the best stadiometer to have is the Holten Harpenden stadiometer, but it is very expensive. So you could have, there are a lot of rigid stadiometers which are available with a vertical scale, a footboard, and a headboard on it. The child should be standing on the footboard with the feet approximated together, the heels touching each other, touching the vertical board behind or the scale, the calves, buttocks, and shoulders touching behind, and the head looking forward in the Frankfurt plane, and the Frankfurt plane being parallel to the floor. That's how you make the child stand, and then you approximate the headboard and touch the head of the child.
So do you take 3 times and take the best or average, or is there, or
Yeah,
that is an
it is
old
better.
concept?
It is an individual thing. Once you're sure of how you take it, I mean, you can rely on just one reading also.
So for a normal child, like suppose you're not really looking at the growth spotted child or a child with growth issues, using just that height meter hanging from the wall against a wall is reasonably good enough, because pediatrician may not have space for stadiometer, may not have been inclined to invest so much money. Just a simple height meter, plus minus 1 centimeter.
No, would not be recommended. If there is no stadiometer, then you could use that. But I think having a stadiometer is a bare minimum to measure heights.
All right, that's what the endocrinologists will always say. Next.
Now, Shalini, how frequently to monitor growth of a child? I mean, does it depend on age?
So the first 3 years of growth of any child is going to be very, very rapid, right? We know a baby is born at 50 centimeters, is 75 centimeters at 1 year. And, very, very rapidly growth happens in terms of both length and the weight. And the first 3 years are the time when a child visits a pediatrician is the most common for any illnesses, for vaccinations and stuff. So I think every visit has to be taken as an opportunity to measure the weight. As Hemchand said, for kids less than 2 years, the length and the head circumference, and plot on the respective growth chart. You should always make sure that you have had a look at the gonads and the stretch penile length at birth, right? Between the age of 4 to 8 years, when you know that they will settle down at a normal growth velocity of about 4 to 6 centimeters per year, at least once in 6 months measurement of weight and height has to be done. And then, because we are seeing so many girls and even sometimes boys with early puberty, make sure that you're doing an SMR staging in all the girls from the age of 6 years. Also check the BMI, because we know that from the age of 6, the paradoxical increase in the weight happens even for those babies who are born preterm and IUGR, and they end up getting obese. So always make sure you're checking the BMI. Do a quick check of the penis and the stretch penile length and the SMR staging from 6 years. Now, if the child does not have any issue, like there is no issue with terms of growth or puberty, at least measure a weight, height, BMI, and the puberty staging once a year after the child is 9 years old. But yes, if a child comes to you with concerns of height or weight issues, then the measurements would be more frequent, maybe as frequent as every 3 months.
So this is a minimum that they should do. Depending upon any
Yes.
variation or any
Yes.
issue, they can do it even more frequently.
So if
All
the
right.
child is growing well, this is the minimum that we want.
All right. So these are the charts. You have blue for boys, easy to remember. And so you have the first 5 years. You have this chart which has 0 to 36. First 5 years every month chart for the length, the weight, and the head circumference. And you also have the length for the height type of chart. So blue for boys, and same way you have for the girls. These are, of course, as we have said, IFP adopted WHO charts. So think for girls, you have the same 0 to 5 years weight, head circumference, and length or height, whatever you have taken. As the experts say, below 2 years, you take length. After that, you may try to take height. And you have the same for length for height in centimeter. You don't have BMI, you have length for height for the first 5 years. And again, pink for girls. I think they are easy to remember.
And
Dr.
so if we
Bajania.
can just go back to the charts once, because we always
Yes.
talk about the difference between the length and the height. So if you can
Yes.
see at 2 years, there is a step down on the length and the height chart. So that is to correct for the length and the height.
Perfect. Perfect. All right.
Now,
Dr. Ramesh.
now Shalmi Ben,
Yes.
Dr. Kashish sir has asked that how we measure SPL, stretch penile length.
Yes.
So we'll
So
take it, sir.
basically, we prefer to use not those flexible rulers, but a simple scale that we use for our children at home, right? Right from the base of the phallus to the tip of the penis, we have to stretch the penis and we have to measure in exact centimeters. So, because when sometimes what happens is the penis is sometimes buried, especially in the obese kids. So therefore, we might have to displace the fat also, pick out the root of the phallus, and from there to the tip of the penis, that is how we stretch the penis and check the SPL. That is the stretch penile length.
Correct. So it will be at the pubic symphysis, press well at the base, and then stretch the
Yes.
penis on the foot rule and see till what it. And what is the normal stretch penile length, which you are not worried about? At
So
birth, and
anything
then
less than 2.5 centimeters would be micropenis, right? And the main concern is as the child grows taller, there is not going to be much change in the penile length because that is going to happen only when puberty happens.
puberty.
So a lot
Perfect.
of kids will come to us at the age of 9 and 10 years, but reassurance is the thing that happens
Yeah.
most.
Like the commonest reason you have an obese child who's 6 years old and the penis is buried except the tip of the prepuce, and the parents feel that what's happening with the child, and that's the time when we can reassure. All right, next question, Dr. Ramesh.
Now there are so many charts, Hemchand, but why are we using particularly WHO growth chart for 0 to 60 months till 5 years?
I think old is gold. The WHO charts are the prescriptive charts on a cohort which had adequate Indian representation from South Delhi as well. And as all of us know, all the constraints to compromised growth were annulled. They were given good nutrition. They were optimally breastfed and complementary fed. Optimal environment like maternal, smoking, etc. were avoided, and good health care in terms of immunization and routine pediatric care were given. So they were given the best of the care in all aspects, and it was both a longitudinal and a cross-sectional data which was very prescriptive. So it is very popular, and it remains the most useful tool to identify children with growth abnormalities. And the
Dr.
Indian
Hemchand, if I
Academy
can
of
ask you-
Pediatrics have modified it to include the length, head circumference, and weight for height on a single sheet of paper. So you don't miss overnutrition, you don't miss undernutrition as well. So I think that remains the best bet to use in children below 5 years of age.
So Dr. Hemchand, one question. These are on middle and upper middle income, upper middle income families, or they are including the lowest to the topmost income families? What are the selection criteria for children which are
See, I
enrolled
think the
into
WHO
looking at the
charts
growth?
is a prescriptive chart. It is based on children from the, of course, the affluent group, where all the constraints of health to compromise growth have been taken care of. So there is a criticism that it tends to overdiagnose growth abnormalities in children from the low income group, etc. But I think one has to keep in mind that you have to keep in mind that the use of prescriptive charts are very important, because it is a model which is an aspirational model. You tend to aim for these children to achieve that particular growth. That is number one. And point number two is children with mildly compromised growth, with z-scores between -2 and -3, you are not going to jump and take into action. If they, as told in the first slide during by Dr. Shalmi, if they tend to track along a particular percentile line, you are happy in terms of their growth trajectory. You are not going to make a decision based on cross-sectional assessment, but on longitudinal assessment.
Perfect. So I think I draw a parallel that people are trying to look at the mean hemoglobin in Indian children compared to the Western standard, and they were always lower than the Western standard. And that's because most of them were iron deficient. And so they were given iron and then checked their hemoglobin, and each of them had increase in 1 to 1.5 gram. So if you have 6 children included, then that defeats the purpose. As Dr. Emchan very rightly said, these are children who had freedom to get the best nutrition, the best breastfeeding practices, not very sick, etc. And from the middle, lower middle, upper middle income group, not the lowest income group, maybe because they anyway would be compromised to a large extent. So such children are the potential which the community can actually gain. And that's the whole idea, that you cannot downgrade your chart in a malnourished population. If you have 40% undernutrition and malnourished children, you take this as a standard, then you're not going to achieve the actual potential, because all of them, if you give them good nutrition, they would have a tendency to grow well. All right. So these are the new charts which I was speaking to Dr. Vaman Kadilkar, and I was very intrigued that why are we still using the WHO chart? Of course, WHO charts are very good for the first 5 years, but it had only one representative city from South Delhi as a cohort from India, and there were other countries which may have difference in their genetic potential. So why are we not having 0 to 5 years Indian charts as we have for 5 to 18 years? So he said it has already been done by him, and it has been published in way back in 2019 actually, where he has made his own, through a data generated on middle and upper middle income children who had ad-lib good nutrition, etc., as what Dr. Emchan said. And these are the charts that he has published, which has the 3rd, 10, 25th, 58th, 75th, 90th, and the 97th centile. So again, blue for boys for 0 to 5 years, and pink for girls 0 to 5 years. Of course, he also has updated data for 5 to 18 years. So those charts are also available. As you can see here, I have given the reference. If someone wants it, I can even send this chart to them. If they don't want to use the 0 to 5 WHO chart, you can use this chart. And how would they differ from the existing WHO chart? So I just took one example. You take a 2.5-year-old male child in India who is weighing, say, 13 kilos and length is 92.5 centimeter. This is the IAP chart, which is nothing else but WHO chart, which are adopted. If I put the height and weight here, you can see the both are on the 50th centile. So they are like bang in the normal middle of the normal. And if I put that now on the new chart of 2019, then you can see that there is some increase in the percentile, at least for the height, if not for the weight. Even weight is little above the 50th centile. So there is going to be some difference. And this being updated chart as compared to 2015 charts, which are already based on data collected much before that. And I'm sure Dr. Emchan and I will agree that every 10 years, a population has an increase in the potential by increasing height and weight. And that we have seen that many of us are now growing taller, and our children are even better taller than what we are. So maybe it's time for IAP also to look into this new data and maybe have a consensus meeting to say that do we need to update our growth charts. So I will leave it there because we won't dwell much into this, especially when Dr. Vaman is not here. All right. So these are the 5 to 18 years. Again, blue for boys, and unlike in children below 5 years, you can see here they are 3rd to 97 centiles. So there are 7 centiles for the height and weight. The head circumference goes out obviously, and we have this BMI chart, which also tells you which is the cutoff for overweight and which is the cutoff for obesity. And again, same thing, blue for boys. And we have the same chart for girls, 5 to 18 years. Again, the same 5 to 3rd to 97 centile for the height and weight, and the BMI charts, and pink for girls. Okay, so Dr. Ramesh.
Nitin bhai, please take it, because some of the friends have written that link is not opening. So just managing. Yeah, you can take this.
Oh, okay. The link is not opening.
Common link for viewers.
Common link. So can Tech please look into that? Someone from Tech is there?
Yes, sir.
Your streamline is not working?
I'm sharing, Nitin bhai, your link. I tried that open.
No, sir, it's working.
Actually, what I would suggest, Dr. Ramesh, Those who have asked, give them this faculty link.
I've shared. I've shared.
They can join directly here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Alok, 5 to 18 years, we have Indian growth chart. And as I said, there is already updated chart by Dr. Khadilkar as published in 2019. How many centers participated in this exercise? You have any idea? And what do these percentiles mean? And when do you worry?
Yeah.
Ah.
So about 87,000 children were screened, out of which data from about 33,000 children was selected from 14 different centers across India, divided into zones. So north, south, west, east, and central.
Correct.
And they were belonging to upper and middle socioeconomic groups.
Correct.
And that's how the charts were made. So
Correct.
centiles, when the reference population is divided into 100 equal parts in a normal distribution, each unit is a centile.
Correct.
So out of which the population between the third and the 97th centile is called the normally growing population, and with the 50th centile being the mean.
Correct.
And the lines help you to decide if the child is growing as per the population standards, if the child is growing as per the genetic potential, and when compared with the MPH, and if the child has a normal growth velocity without any undue acceleration or deceleration. So that's about it.
So when do you say a child's growth is changed, like either upwards or downwards, is when they cross centiles by what? 2 centiles, 3 centiles, and over how long? Over what period?
So any undue acceleration or deceleration has to be evaluated by the pediatrician. So the child could have early puberty, the child could develop a systemic illness. So you should always look at these accelerations, undue accelerations or decelerations very carefully. But usually movement across 2 major percentiles is usually considered abnormal for the pediatrician.
Correct. So Dr. Shalmi, now we also have this 0 to 18 years combined chart, like so far all the chart that were available, of course they're still available as 0 to 5 and 5 to 18, but now they have been also made in 0 18. It's so difficult to actually plot the growth parameters in the first 5 years as it goes so crowded. Like just to give an example here, I mean, you see here in the first 3 or 4 years, the centile lines are almost crossing one another. It's so impossible to put and come to some conclusion. So your comments on that? Why, I mean, why these charts were made and where do you use these charts?
So these charts were actually made so that we don't have to use 2 different charts, right? And especially after the age of 3 years, you might want to compare the child's growth to the genetic potential.
Right.
It would not be possible on the 0 to 5 year charts. So I think I would still recommend that for at least 0 to 2 years, we keep on using the 0 to 5 year growth charts because we'll be tracking growth more closely, more frequently also. So we need those spaced out charts. But maybe after the age of 2 years or 3 years, once we start comparing a child's growth to the mid-parental height, then these charts can be used.
Perfect. All right. So Dr. Hemchand, we also have some waist circumference charts available now. When does one use it and how useful they are?
I think waist circumference is an important emerging tool of adiposity. So I think waist circumference measurement complements assessment of BMI assessment in obese children to identify adiposity. The Indian Academy of Pediatrics 2023 guidelines on obesity tells us in every child who has an elevated BMI, waist circumference should be measured. Waist circumference should be measured and plotted on this Indian waist circumference chart, and presence of the waist circumference above the 70th percentile alerts the pediatrician to the possibility of metabolic syndrome. So waist circumference should be measured in the standing position with a horizontal tape at the end of expiration just above the right ilium to the nearest of 0.1 centimeters. It helps you identify metabolic syndrome early.
Just repeat how does one take waist circumference?
The waist circumference is taken in the standing position in the horizontal plane at the end of expiration, just above the right ilium to the minimum or to the nearest 0.1 centimeters. And it is plotted on this waist circumference.
All right. And these are the charts which are the Indian chart. Is there any other chart, Indian chart, besides this, what is published here in Indian Pediatrics in 2014?
They were published in the Journal of Pediatrics, sir, and they have been endorsed by the Indian Academy of Pediatrics.
So this is the IAP chart for the waist circumference of boys and girls.
I'm not sure if IAP has endorsed it, but in the IAP 2023 obesity guidelines, there is a mention to use these charts.
All right, because these are not available under the IAP growth charts on the IAP website. So that's why maybe the new, there's a need to look into all this with the data that's available. But these weight circumference charts are again available online. You can go to this reference as I quoted here, and you can download these charts from there for you to start using them in children, as Dr. Emcha says, who have BMI more than the required. All right. Dr. Alok, what are these extended BMI charts? And are there also extended height charts, as Dr. Hemchand was mentioning when I was talking to him? So what are these extended BMI charts? Like you can see, these are the two BMI charts which are extended, blue for boy and pink for girls. Can you explain this chart, please?
Yeah. So these were published in the obesity guidelines last year. So as we know that overweight is a BMI of 23 adult equivalent and obese is a BMI of 27 adult equivalent. So there are two more lines added to even sub-classify obesity into three
Okay.
classes. The dotted line above that, if your BMI is above that, it would be called as class 2 obesity. And the topmost line, if your BMI lies above that, it is called class 3 obesity. This is basically for pediatric endocrinologists to assess the response to treatment and intervention. So if you're if the pediatric endocrinologist wants to give pharmacotherapy, it is usually given in a child who is above class 3 cutoff after a trial of lifestyle modifications for at least 6 months. And even consideration of bariatric surgery along with pharmacotherapy in a child who's above class 3 with or without any comorbidities or without or above class 2 in the presence of comorbidities. So that is the use of these extended charts.
So for a general pediatrician, crossing the 70th centile or the yellow line would mean alert and refer them if basic intervention like diet and exercise doesn't help. And you all will then classify further the severity and accordingly give the management, including the pharmacological management and or a bariatric surgery. Which is the youngest child which you can actually do a bariatric surgery, or what age is the cutoff use?
Oh, I don't have any experience with it.
Okay, anyone from other like Dr. Hemjan? Or
Sir, I think the Endocrine Society gave a guideline that until growth and puberty is complete, endocrine surgery cannot be contemplated. That is 18 years of age or adult SMR. But the recent IAP obesity guidelines have given a lower threshold because post-COVID there is an epidemic of obesity. So if you don't have response to pharmacological agents above the age of 12 years in specific situations, you can use it.
Irrespective of SMR.
No, so that's what. If there is a failure of pharmacological agents and life-threatening complications, one has to use it as an experimental.
As a cutoff of 12. Okay, fine. All right. So these are the IAP-friendly charts as they are called. So Dr. Shalmi, what are these IAP-friendly charts and how does it help to calculate MPH quickly in obesity as compared to measuring or trying to use an app or trying to use a formula?
Yes, sir. So I think for a busy pediatrician, the OPD IAP has made the job very, very easy. So if you can see, there is a right column which has father's height, mother's height, and a vertical line which says the MPH centile. So typically we have to calculate the formula as in mother's height plus father's height plus 13/2 for a boy and minus 13/2 for a girl, then plot at 18 years, and that is how we get the target height. But here, what we can do is, say if we know the father's height.
So I'm giving an example. Okay.
Yeah, so if we know that the father's height is 165 and the mother's height is 150, in that column, we just have to mark those two dots for the mother height and the father height, join a line, and wherever that line crosses the vertical blue line, that is the MPH percentile. So, you would roughly know whether your child is growing according to the genetic percentile or not. So that has made the job very, very clear. And when we talk about the BMI calculator, so we have seen that after the age of 8 years, the risk of obesity is really increasing. And again, we need to use this complicated formula wherein, you have weight in kg upon height in meter square. So you check the height, you convert that into meter and do a meter square also. So again, to make the job very, very easy. Sir, if you can go back to the charts. Yes. So on the left column, what we have now is simply on the y-axis, we have the weight in kg. On the x-axis, we have height in centimeters, and we have got 3 lines. So the topmost line is the red line, which is red flag, so obesity. Then the yellow is overweight, and the below black line is underweight. So for that
Alright.
particular height in centimeter, we have to go to the weight and, just mark standing in a sleeping line. And wherever the two lines cross, that will tell you whether the child's BMI is in the obese range, overweight range, or if that BMI is less than the, below that black line, then the child is underweight. So roughly
Alright.
based on these, we get an idea whether intervention is needed or not.
All right, Dr. Shalmi, I'll make it a little more easier as an exercise for the pediatrician. So let's say, first of all, mid-parental height is mother's height plus father's height. Let's say X, divide by 2 for both boys and girls. For boys, you had 6.5 centimeter. In girls, you minus 6.5 centimeter. That gives the target mid-parental height. And the range is plus or minus 6 centimeter above and above that. So like suppose mother is 150, father is 165, 315 total, divide by 2 is 157.5. You add 6.5 for boys, that becomes 164. So the range will be 158 to 170 centimeter. For the girls, you minus 6.5, so that becomes 151. So the range will be 145 to 157. And for the BMI, it's weight for height in meter square. So you will need a calculator. To make the life simple, like we do the same boy who is, like say 115, an 8-year-old boy has height of 115. So you plot 115 at over against the 8 years. So he's between the whatever the third and the 10th centile. Father is 165, mother is 150. So the target height is 164. So you put an arrow at 164. Now you have a range plus or minus 6. So you have this range which is plus or minus 6 showing you 158 to 170. And now you extend the child's growth as when he becomes 18, provided he continues to grow like this. Is he coming between this range or no? So like you say, he has grown like this over the years and he's coming within the range, which means even though he's on almost just above third centile, he's normal for his genetic potential based on his father's and mother's height. So this is a visual way you can make out whether the child is growing well. So he's well within the range. Let's say his weight is 27 kilo. So we plot it against his age. Now, obviously, you can see we have to calculate his BMI, which comes to 20.4. So we plot it now at 20.4. So he's already obese. Now, if you use the same thing on a chart which Dr. Shalini was saying, where you have the mid-parental height on the right-hand side and the obesity chart on the left upper quadrant. So same child, if I put here mid-parental height, you can see it has crossed 10 centile, which means he's normal because anything below third centile would be an abnormal. So at one visual, without actually calculating, it tells you the child is growing well. And the same thing on a BMI. For say, suppose this is a 12-year-old boy, weight is 55, height is 150. So you put a horizontal line at 55 kg, a vertical line at 150, and see where he's going. He's going above the red line, so he's obese. So it's a very quick way of finding out whether where is the line as far as weight is concerned. But mind you, this can be done only above 120 centimeter height, because below 120 centimeter, it does not allow you to plot it. So this is one quick way of knowing about the mid-parental height as you can see here, and the obesity as you can see here. All right. So Dr. Hemchand, before we take cases and implement all this knowledge that you all are giving to us for the pediatrician to use it in the plotting the growth chart, there are certain terms which also need to be clarified. So what is height age and what is weight age?
I think height age denotes the age of the child with the same average height. Weight age denotes the age of the child with the same average weight. That's a very simplistic understanding. All you need to know is to draw a line parallel to the x-axis, touch the 50th percentile, drop down and meet it. That denotes the height age and weight age.
So just see the example here. You have a 7-year-old boy, weight is 16 kg. So we have plotted against 17 years. This is the height, 112 centimeter. And now you extend it on the left-hand side because he's short. So you'll go to the left to the 50th centile. That's what you're trying to say?
Exactly.
And then draw that again vertically. So his height age actually is 6 years. Right? Same way you do for the weight. His weight is 16 kilo for 7 years. And he's definitely lower than the 50th centile. So again, go to the left. Touch the 50th centile horizontally and see where it falls. So again, 6 years. So his weightage is 6 years. So for a 7-year-old boy who's looking small and thin, his heightage and weightage are 6 years. So at what, I mean, is this okay? Like suppose 7-year-old child is 6 years and 8 years, 7 years on weight and heightage. When do you start saying that, okay, this is too much of difference between the chronological age and height and weightage?
General by convention, discrepancy of chronological age versus height age or versus age age of up to 1 year is permissible.
Correct.
But having said that, whenever you see height age and weight age on two different sides of the median, you would have to be careful. And the second thing one needs to keep in mind is you definitely need to have disorder of growth, an abnormal short stature or an obesity, etc., to apply this concept of height age and weight age.
Correct. Perfect. All right. So let's see some cases now. So we have learned that there are charts for boys and girls for 0 to 5 years, which are WHO adopted by IAP. We have charts for girls and boys for 5 to 18 years. The 0 to 5 years have length and or height, depending on the age of the child. Below 2 years, about 2 years, head circumference and weight. And for 5 to 18 years, and we have height for weight charts. And for 5 to 18 years, we have height and weight, and we have the BMI charts. The addition is being the waist circumference to further classify the obesity. And you have extended BMI charts, which tells you again further how severe is the obesity, so that you know when to intervene and whether your interventions are helpful. So this is what we have learned in a normal child who comes to you, that if you plot this chart, this is how you use this chart, this is how you calculate height age, weightage, etc. Now let's see actual implementation of this knowledge in two cases. And I would really thank Dr. Shalmi, her sister, Dr. Ruchi, and Dr. Alok for contributing some of these cases, which I have taken in the next 11 cases that we are going to discuss. So let's start with the first case. And Dr. Alok, you can take this case. You have a 10-year-old girl, height is 125, weight is 22.5 centimeters. Now, what do you want me to do?
Can you just plot them?
All right,
on
so
the,
I am plotting.
on the
Okay.
growth chart?
All right, so I am plotting 1 minute. So I am plotting it. This is his height, is at just about third centile, and this is now what do you want?
I plot the weight also.
Now weight will complete. Let's first finish height.
Okay. Okay. Let's see.
He's
the,
short, so the parents are
yes.
worried. He's so short, doctor.
So we are wanting to analyze whether the child is short with respect to the population or with respect to the mid-parental height. So we want to compare it with the mid-parental height here.
All right. So this is the parent side. Mid-parental target height is 148. So I put a chart there and I give the range. Now, at 18 years, I've shown the dot, which is looking at exactly at the mid-parental height target.
Yes.
So is this okay for the child?
Yes. So the height and weight are above the third percentile. The mid-parental height is also along the same percentile as the child's height. Of course, I would want to examine the child, look at the child's SMR, and as a pediatric endocrinologist, I would also want to do a bone age here just to be sure, and then assess whether the child has had a normal growth velocity either prospectively or from here on.
If you have the previous data, you can plot them, or you ask them to come every 6 months or every 4 months.
And as long as the child's growth velocity is normal and the bone age gives me a normal height prediction, I think the child is normal in the current context.
Perfect. So you have now learned how to plot a normal child's height, mid-parental height target, and the range and his weight. And if you are still worried, you can put the BMI, which is coming to 14.4 for this child. You put it on the BM chart, and he's between the 10th and 25th side. So all normal. No need to investigate the child further. Is that correct, Dr. Alok?
Yes, that's right.
All right. So this we started with a normal.
But make sure that the growth velocity is normal. This is just a one point assessment.
Okay.
But
Now,
this child needs to be prospectively seen.
All right. Now, the next case, Dr. Shalmi, 9-year-old boy has got. The parents are worried that the child is looking short. So this is the height and the weight that the pediatrician recorded. So let's show the chart. Now,
yes, so we are going to use a blue colored growth chart because the child is a boy. At this point, I would also request one thing, that we forget to check the date of birth and therefore calculate the exact age of the child.
Correct.
So we should always make a habit of writing down the date of birth, 9 years, 3 months, 9 years, 6 months. That is also going to make a difference. So we will be doing that. Now let us plot the height and weight of the child on the growth chart. So what we can see is that the height of the child is on the third centile. So if we compare the child's height to the population, he seems to be on the shorter side. So then the next step is to compare to the genetic potential. So we would need the father's and the mother's height.
So that's the father's, mother's height and the mid-parental. So I give you the growth chart and the range.
Yes. So again, the target height is also on the lesser percentiles. And if I'm to assume that the child keeps on growing in this line, then the child falls in the target height, but we cannot always assume. So what
Correct.
we need to do is we need to make sure that the child keeps on following this line. Now,
Correct.
apparently small looking child. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the parents to call back again after 3 to 6 months and get what is known as a growth velocity. So here, rather than going for any investigations or any endocrine investigations, let us just see the child back after 3 to 6 months. The child is otherwise well. He does not
Perfect.
have any complaints. So what we need to do is we need to measure a growth velocity.
Perfect. So this is what they came back after 6 months. You can see the second dot here. You can see.
Yes.
So his velocity was 3 centimeter in the last 6 months. So almost 6 centimeter per year. Is that
Right.
okay? Is that makes you happy?
Yes. So as we talked earlier, until her child hits puberty, the growth velocity is going to be 4 to 6 centimeter per year. And the reason why we want the growth velocity is because kids who are growing with a normal growth velocity tend to have less chances of an endocrine condition.
Correct.
Right? So most likely this looks like a case of familial short stature only.
Perfect. All right. So that brings us to this height velocity charts that you
Yes.
talked about. So what are these? Can you explain these height velocity charts?
Yes,
These
sir.
are for 5 to 17 years boys
These are
and
for 5 to
girls.
17 years. And what
Yes.
we can see is that there is a nice growth spurt that happens. Now, this growth spurt again happens at a different rate for both the girls and the boys. So
Correct.
girls usually tend to have a growth spurt early in the puberty. They have a slightly plateaued growth spurt and they finish also earlier as compared to the boys who tend to have a growth spurt in Tanner stage 3 to 4 and they have a taller growth spurt and then they would grow for a longer period of time also. Now,
Correct.
on the height velocity percentile charts, what is more important is that the velocity of the child should be 25 percentile or more. So anybody's height velocity, if it is less than the 25 percentile, so here we are not looking at 3rd and 10th percentile, we're looking at
Correct.
25th percentile. So
Correct.
anybody whose height velocity is less than the 25th percentile is said to have a poor growth velocity.
Correct. So you can see here the chart is growing down from 5 years. It doesn't mean the child is stopped growing. If the velocity has stopped, which means
Slowed
from
down.
8 centimeter, it has slowed down till the puberty spurt
Yes.
happens, both for the boys and the girls. So let's use this chart for our patient, that 9-year-old child who had come. This is his, he grew by say 5 centimeters, 2.5 centimeters in 6 months, so 5 centimeters per year. So if you put this chart, he's exactly at the 25th centile for a 9-year-old child. So that's the cutoff which you will use. If it was below this, then probably you would have done more frequently monitoring and to see that his velocity is not dropping every 6 months to suggest that there is something wrong with the child's growth potential and maybe he needs investigation further. How long you wait for the growth velocity to little falter before you advise any intervention or investigations?
So I think if we've observed the child for 6 months and we see a faltering growth velocity, then that is a good time to start the basic investigations. Like we would not we want to wait for another 6 more months.
Perfect. So what is this? I mean, it's a rule of 5. Can you explain this
Yeah,
cartoon?
so I think this is a very simple way of showing that a child will grow about 25 centimeter per year in the first year. Until they are about 4 years, they would grow another 10 centimeter per year, settling down to 5 centimeter per year till they hit puberty. And then once they grow, they have the pubertal growth spurt, they will grow really rapidly at around 8 to 9 centimeter per year, reaching their final adult height.
Yeah, so it's all at 5, 5s are 25, 5 2s are 10,
It's
5
a
1s
very
are
rough
5, 5
estimation.
1s
So,
are 5.
sir,
Yeah, but I think general pediatrics level where they are not
Yes.
expecting children with endocrine disorders, I think this is a fair that at least they make use of at least this type of simple calculation to come to some conclusion.
Right.
All right, Dr. Hemchan, we move to the third case. Now we have a 14-year-old boy who still looks like a baby is what the parents are saying. His height is 138 centimeter and his weight is 33 kilos.
Yeah,
So I
so
plot-
here we have a 14-year-old boy who's concerned about his growth. Now
Correct.
you use the IAP charts and you plot the growth. You find
So
that
this
the
is his height.
height is 138. You see that the height is below the 3rd percentile. Yes, you
Correct.
identify a growth abnormality, which is short stature. This warrants identification of the corresponding height age. You
Correct.
draw a line parallel to the x-axis, touch the 50th percentile, and you drop it down perpendicularly and see where it meets the x-axis.
So again,
Of course, you will have to look at the parent's height as well to see whether this growth faltering is because of the parental height. So
Perfect.
you
So
look
this
at the
is the
target height. The target height is at the 168 centimeters, which is not below the third percentile. So this
correct.
growth faltering is not because of short parents. So
Correct.
what else could it be? So you would definitely have to look into the height age of this child. You draw a line parallel to the x-axis, touch the 50th percentile and draw a line vertically downwards to meet at the x-axis. You would find
So
that this child at the chronological age of 14 years has the height of a 10.5-year-old child.
and this weight age also is 10
His
and a half
weight is
years.
33 kilos. Again, what you would do, you would again look into that. You would see that the weight is just above the third percentile. And you see again that this child at the chronological age of 14 years is behaving as if he has a height of a 10.5-year-old child, as if he has a weight of a 10.5-year-old child. Something is
Now,
preventing this child from growing.
correct.
So what
Correct.
could it be? You go into the child and you elicit a more detailed history, and what you can see that the father also complains of delayed shaving at 17 years of age. So you're reminded of the Panchatantra story of the rabbit and the tortoise, and this boy, like his father, is following the path of the tortoise, growing very slowly with intact growth potential. And how would you look
So
at that intact growth potential? You would do a bone age, and the bone age is done for this child, and you see that the bone age is delayed and it is only again matching to the height age and weight age of chronological age, that
will
is
you also look at
11
the
years,
SMR
11
at
years.
this
And if you
time?
look at the SMR again, if you look into the sexual maturity, you know that this child is still stage 1. So the stage 1 SMR and the delayed bone age tells us there is a lot of time to act. This child is nothing but a slow growing normal child who is following the path of the tortoise and growing slowly. He has nothing but constitutional delay of growth and puberty. As you see, as you follow up this child enters into puberty late, has a very good spurt and attains his target height. So this is a classical case of a sheep presenting like a wolf. A sheep presenting like a wolf, that is short stature but requires no treatment but just observation, and you see he has attained his target potential.
So I think the clue here is that number one, 14-year boy, short but not SMR, that of a 14-year-old normal boy. So that tells you there is delayed puberty, family history of delayed puberty. And if you have done the bone age was 2 to 3 years or 3 to 4 years lower than the chronological age. That again tells you. And then you need to just follow up with the children. Will you do a basic test like a thyroid, etc.? Or
Yes,
that also is not
definitely.
required?
So
Yes.
here you know that the growth potential of this child is intact. Common faltering growth causes for growth faltering, maybe a thyroid profile, a systemic disease screen would definitely be helpful so that nothing is missed in this
Correct.
particular
But
child.
if all that is normal, then you just
Then all you
observe
need
and
to
reassure.
So all
And
you
you,
need to do is observe this child, clinically follow him up, and wait for him to enter into his natural pubertal process.
yeah, and you can see this the dotted line, which is what would happen to him over the years of puberty spurt, and then he will achieve actually the exact mid-parental height target, which is 168 centimeter. All right, so we have learned a very common cause of a delay in a short-looking child with a delay puberty is a constitution delay in growth and puberty. Okay, let's move to the next slide, Dr. Alok. We have an 11-year-old boy not growing well. His height is 128 centimeter and weight is 20 kilo. What will you do next?
Yeah, let's begin with plotting.
So
Yeah,
his
that's
height
the
is on the
height,
third
and
centile.
yeah, and the weight is.
We'll come to weight later.
Let's
First,
let's come to the MPH. Let's got
so
the
again,
MPH.
yeah, so we have the range and the
Yeah,
MPH target there.
yeah.
The three arrows, so
So
he's much below that.
yes, definitely below that. I'd like to check the weight as well on the
Weight
chart.
is also
So yeah, so if we now draw these lines to assess the height age and the bone age, height age and the weight age. Now, if you see the weight age is significantly more affected as compared to the height age in this child. So I would want to do, first of all, a thorough general and systemic examination to rule out any kind of malnutrition or any chronic systemic condition. I would not jump to doing endocrine investigations first in this child. Again, growth velocity is a very important clue and indispensable in such situations. And like I said, I would first look at a systemic cause or something related to nutrition in this child first.
perfect. So the chronological age is definitely above the height age, but the height age is above the weight age. So what is more
Yes,
affected is the weight than the height.
weightage.
That
Yeah.
usually happens in patients with chronic systemic condition malnutrition. So you look at the heart, look at the lung, look at the liver, look at all the systemic cause which you can think of rather than think of an endocrine cause. All right. Dr. Shalmi, a case for you. Now a 10-year-old girl, she's parents are worried that she's not growing well. Now they say everyone in her class have achieved puberty. Some of them are also having menses, and this girl is looking like a baby. Her height is 110 centimeter and weight is 22 kilos.
Yes, sir.
So
So
that's
let
your
us plot
height.
the height, compare with the target height. So let us have
Okay,
the
that's
parents' height also.
so that's your target height.
Yes. So here we can see that the height of the child is significantly less. So now when we talk about the concept of heightage and weightage, sir, where it is important is when both the height and the weight parameters are on the lower side, this concept of heightage and weightage tells us which parameter is more affected. So if
Correct.
we can have the heightage and weightage for this child. So this
That's you
child
are
is
your
10
red
years
lines.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Go
this
ahead.
child is 10 years old. What we can see is that the height of the child, the height age of the child is 7 years.
No, the
Yeah, I
graph is
think
little
it's,
moved. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
yeah. So I think here, sir, the height age is more affected as compared to the weight age.
Yeah.
There
So
is
it's the
some,
reverse. It's reverse. The height age is
yeah.
5.5 and the weight is 7 years. Sorry.
Correct. So
Yes.
if you just plot, when you look at the growth chart, you find that both the height and the weight parameters are on the lower side. But the height age and the weight age will tell us that in this particular child who is 10 years old, it is the height which is more affected than the weight. So
Correct.
weight is preserved, but height is more affected. So something is preventing this child from growing taller. So in this case, definitely we want to look for any endocrine cause, any syndrome, especially like Turner syndrome. We are looking at a girl who is 10 years old, or maybe even skeletal dysplasia. Say if you have a younger kid who comes to you short stature, sometimes even rickets can come to you with just short stature. So, in this particular case, looking at the growth chart, we know where we have to direct our investigations.
Right. So I think just for the viewers don't get confused, this height age is
Yes.
not 7, it is 5.5 and the
Yes,
weight age is
reverse.
7. As you can see here, this above is height, which is 5.5 years and the weight is 7. So my mistake here, but it depicted here that the chronological age is 10 years, the weight age is 7 and the height age is 5.5. So unlike the previous child where the weight was more affected than the height, which tells you something about malnutrition, here the height is affected more than the weight, so tells you there is some problem in the endocrine or some skeletal dysplasia or one of those syndrome type picture. All right, so see, just by plotting height, weight, and looking at the height age and the weightage, you can gain so much of knowledge instead of giving a battery of investigation to children who look otherwise short, and we don't come to any conclusion. All right, next is Dr. Hemchand. You have a 12-year-old boy. Now he's worried about his weight. His height is 158 centimeter and his weight is 62 kilos. So I plot for you his height, which is on the 90th centile, and you want the mid-parental height. He's well above the mid-parental height, and this is his weight, which is between 90th and 97th side. Now, what do you go about?
Yeah, I think clearly you have a child with overgrowth syndrome. You have something
Correct.
that is pushing up the height and pushing up the weight. So
Correct.
now the next step, you would definitely know that this child has a growth abnormality. So all you need to do is look at the height age and weight age. As once you identify the growth abnormality, look at the height age and weight age. All you can see that this child at a chronological age of 12 years has the height of a 13-and-a-half-year-old child and has the weight of a 17-year-old child. Something is pushing this child's growth forward, both in terms of height and in terms of weight. And as you can see, the genetic potential is not the culprit. The only hormone which can do this sort of a picture is insulin. Overnutrition, insulin mediated syndrome can push this child, metabolic syndrome can push this child's growth forward. And all you need to do is measurement of BMI and plot it on the BMI chart, and you would find that this child has an elevated BMI. A tall child, obese child, usually is presumed to have nutritional obesity. And all this child requires is simple dietary advice on diet, exercise, lifestyle measures, cutting down screen. Unnecessary tests can be avoided by just using the simple growth chart, identifying that this child has obesity, this child has tall stature, this child has hyperinsulinemia, and you need to cut down that hyperinsulinemia.
So you had a small child where weight was much affected than the height, was undernutrition. You have a tall child where weight is much more than the height, over nutrition. So obesity, as Dr. Hemchand said, we plot is BMI 24.8, definitely is above the highest percentile obesity, and that's why the nutritional cause of obesity is the cause of this tall child. All right, Dr. Alok. We have another child, 13-year-old boy who is worried about gynecomastia. Now, his height is
Yeah.
165 centimeter and weight is 45. So I plotted his height is on the 90th centile, which is much above the mid-parental height range, and his weight is at the 50th centile, which is 45 kilos. Now, what do you do?
Yes. So this is the
Alok, your voice is cracking. Sorry, we
child
can't hear you.
who's
Alok,
tall
Alok,
the
we can't hear
NPH with
you.
gynecomastia. I would like to know the proportions and the SMR of the child here.
All right. So first of all, again, we say he's a tall child with normal weight and a gynecomastia.
No,
And
the
this is SMR.
proportions.
Alok, have we lost you?
Yeah, there seems to be a lag here. I
No, it's
can't.
okay. Now
Yeah,
without your video, we are very clear. So
yes,
this is
yeah.
his
So
height
this is
age
a
is
tall.
14 years and his weight is
Yes,
exactly 13 years. So he's tall
yeah,
but with normal weight and gynecomastia.
yes.
This is SMR.
Now, yeah. So now the proportion. If you look at the proportions, do you have the proportion of the child here?
Yes.
The
So
upper
we
to
have
lower,
his proportion.
upper.
Yes.
Yeah. So in a tall child, you will always want to look at the proportions. Here, the upper segment to lower segment ratio is 0.85, which that means the lower segment is much longer than the upper segment in a tall child with gynecomastia, SMR being prepubertal with a testicular volume of just 2 ml. If I had to do one investigation here, I would want to look at child's karyotype, especially in this situation. Yeah, and the
That's your
karyotype, yeah, it shows a 47XXY. So always remember to not miss syndromic children coming with tall stature with upper to lower segment ratio less than 0.9 along with features of gynecomastia.
All right. So again, a simple growth chart telling you that the height is abnormally more than the chronological and weightage, and with an SMR which is prepubertal and lower length being more than the upper segment. That you first do is rule out the syndromic like Klinefelter syndrome. All right. So we talked about interpreting growth chart with the SMR. Like last three cases, we have been talking about SMR, SMR, SMR. So this is how you interpret the puberty. This is the girls. You have the breast development. There are stage 1 to 5, and the pubic hair. For the boys, you have the pubic hair, the phallus, and the testicular volume. And this is the orchidometer. If you're interested in further into endocrine, this is something simple which is available anywhere and you should buy it. So this is what Dr. Shalmi was talking about. Dr. Shalmi, this is your own slide. So can you explain what you were trying to say previously?
Yeah, so what I was saying is that girls and boys tend to grow differently during puberty.
Correct.
So girls tend to go into puberty earlier as compared to the boys. So they have a slightly shorter time to grow before
Okay.
the puberty starts.
Mhm.
When we talk about the various stages of puberty, a girl starts having her growth spurt at almost B2 itself. So as soon as the girl enters puberty, the growth spurt starts happening. You can see that the peak height velocity in a girl is slightly smaller as compared to that of a boy. And once the child has menarche, on an average, they will grow about 4 to 6 centimeters, whatever growth is left. When you talk
Correct.
about the boys, they hit puberty slightly later as compared to the girls. So they have little longer to grow. The growth spurt also happens in the later stages of puberty. So Tanner stage 3 and 4. The peak
Correct.
height velocity is also bigger as compared to the girls. And
Correct.
therefore, the average gap about 13 centimeter between a brother and a sister of the same family.
Correct. Perfect. So you can take this case now. Now let's look at smaller children. 18 months female child, worried about rapid breast development since last 6 months, and a sudden spurt in height is what the parents have noticed. This is the length and the weight with the mid-parental height target being 150 centimeter. What do you want me to do now?
Yes, sir. So let us plot on the growth chart. So since
All
the
right.
child is 1.5 years, we are going to use the 0 to 5 years growth
Correct.
charts. So here again, whenever you feel that the parents complain that the child is growing too fast, always make sure that you are ruling out precocious puberty, whatever the age of the child is, because it
Correct.
is estrogen which derives, with a normal weight. If the child's height or length is gaining too fast, we always, even if the child is 1.5 years, we need to rule out a precocious puberty. So here you
Correct.
can see that the length of the child is definitely more than the 97th percentile, the weight being on the normal centiles. So as I
Correct.
said, we need to look at the SMR staging. So this
Okay.
child has a bilateral breast development, which is stage 3, which is definitely abnormal. Now, whether
Correct.
this is just a premature thelarch or it is an actual central precocious puberty, so what we would next do is we would get a bone age done.
Okay.
Yes. So in this case, 1.5 years, the bone age is definitely advanced at 4.5 years. And you have done the sex hormone estimations. We can see that the LH level is significantly high. So this is pituitary driven precocious puberty, which is known as the central precocious puberty. So these kids have to be paid attention quickly. It could just turn out to be a hypothalamic hematoma also sitting there,
Correct.
causing the
Correct.
precocious puberty. So the next step is to get an MRI brain quickly.
Correct. So remember, a small child with thelarchy, but with an increased spurt growth, endocrine cause, especially if the SMR is showing that the breast development is stage 3 and you have a high bone age and a high hormone level. Now compare this with the sorry. So compare this with the other child. So Dr. Shalmi, maybe you can take this case as well. A 30-month female child worried about breast development since last 2 months, but without growth acceleration. So again, we have plotted her height and weight, and you can see both of them are in the normal range.
So I think at now 30 months, I would be okay comparing the child's height to the mid-parental height also. So you can
Correct.
see that the child's growth is not accelerated. There is
Correct.
definitely some breast enlargement which needs to be
Yes.
paid attention, right? And you can
Correct.
see the staging is breast stage 3, but there is no pubic hair or axillary hair.
Correct.
Again, because you want to rule out definitely a central precocious puberty. So you would definitely get your basic investigations. So here when the child is 2.5 years of age, the bone age is also the same and your hormonal levels are very, very pre-pubertal. LH of less than 0.1, estrogen, which is not measurable. So most likely we are dealing with a case of premature benign thelarch here, wherein, there is no growth acceleration, no exposure to the estrogen hormones. Very, very important to keep on following these children on a regular basis because they have a likelihood of going into central precocious puberty. I mean, they into pubertal development slightly earlier as compared to the other girls. But no active intervention would be needed at this point of time.
Fine. So we had 2 children, both with breast development, young girl, one with growth acceleration, high in the hormones, and an SMR which look like a central precocious puberty, and without growth spurt and a normal hormone look, and with a normal bone age as compared to accelerated bone age in the previous child. This is premature thelarchy. Just observe them and give reassurance. Is that what you will do?
We would just monitor the child. So
Correct.
every 3 to 6 months, we want to monitor the length and the SMR staging.
Okay. Let's move. Dr. Alok. 6-year-old boy worried about pubic hair growth. That's too early for a child to have that. Parents are very worried. The child also gets very embarrassed. Height is 127 centimeter, weight is 19 kilo. What do you do?
Yeah, can we have the plots?
Okay, the plot is about 97 for
Yeah,
the
so
height.
the height,
You also have the
the
mid-parental
child
range.
the child is above the 97th height percentile, and even if you compare it with the mid-parental height, it is way above it.
Okay.
Tall child with pubic hair, we should think about whether this is puberty or not.
Okay.
So can we have the SMR? Okay, we'll have the height, age, and the weight age. But
So this is the
can
height
we?
age. This
Yeah,
is the weightage. So is chronological height age is more than the weightage, which is same
yes,
as the chronological age. So it's definitely tall, but a normal weight child.
yeah,
Sexual development, tenor is A2, P3,
yeah.
G5.
So the phallus is significantly enlarged with axillary and pubic hair. So we are expecting androgen exposure here. But the testicular volumes are only 2 ml, so the
Correct.
testes cannot be the source of the androgen. So we'll have to look at the adrenals as well. But
Correct.
clinically, are there any other signs that we are seeing? Is there any kind of adrenal stigmata that we are seeing? There is a bit of hyperpigmentation. The child is showing signs of adrenal insufficiency as well, but
Correct.
it's not necessary that the child should be in adrenal insufficiency. But for an adrenal cause, I would want to look at the adrenal profile. I'll want to do a 17-hydroxyprogesterone here along with a testosterone, and the 17-hydroxyprogesterone would usually be elevated in such cases. This is CAH, a cause of peripheral precocious puberty, or gonadotropin independent precocious puberty.
Perfect. All right. So suppose this child didn't have hyperpigmentation. Is there any other cause of peripheral precocious puberty?
Yeah, you could have, if you've looked at the testicular sizes, if there is a discrepancy in the testicular sizes, there is a testicular mass that you're seeing, be very careful. It could be a tumor, a testosterone secreting tumor that you're dealing with, typically a Leydig cell tumor. This was one of the cases which we had, a Leydig cell tumor presenting exactly like the case we discussed. Of course, there were no adrenal signs here, but the child was dealing with precocious puberty.
So when you have peripheral precocious puberty in a boy, look at the pigmentation, which will tell you CH, in which case the testis size will be normal without a mass. If that is absent, look at the testis size and carefully look at an ultrasound, and a mass is seen, it is probably a Leydig cell tumor. All right. Dr. Shalmi, a 30-month-old girl worried about not growing well. She was born very heavy, like 4 kgs, and the length was 50 centimeter, head circumference 34.5. So these are this percentile you can see on the in the weight and head circumference. You know, on the weight she was on the almost 97 centile at birth, but for the for the head circumference and the length she was quite okay. So now at 30 months she has come, and mother said the child is now only 10 kgs. It means she has put on only 6 kilos in the next 2.5 years. And this is the height and head circumference. If you plot it, what has happened is she has continued to grow in the head circumference and in the length, but in the weight she's faltering. So what do you do about it now?
So if the child is well, developmentally normal, so having all the milestones normal, not falling sick very often, it is very, very likely that this could be just a catch down growth. So you have seen our IUGR babies, our preterm babies having a catch up growth and going at par with the peer population. Similarly, if somebody is born large at birth, it is possible that they can gradually slow down. Yes, sir. So as you can see here, the child was born at 4 kg, but is gradually slowing down and now settled on the 50th percentile. So again, very, very important that the child keeps on growing on the percentiles. Then there's nothing to worry, and we just need to reassure the child, the family.
So this is a new term I've heard, a catch down growth in a child who's born with a little more weight at the birth. All right. So again, you can see the mid-parental height is crossing 10 percentile. So the child is potentially growing as per the mid-parent height potential. So no worry about the height, and the weight is settled down at almost the same percentile as that of the height. So the child is over the years growing as well as he should, except that the worry was in the first few years where the weight was not going up as much as the height and the head circumference. So this is what you call catch down growth. Just reassurance is required. All right. So Dr. Hemchand, we have spoken about the bone age when we talked about the children who had accelerated SMR, etc. What is this bone age, and what are the charts that we use in India?
I think as far as bone age is concerned, I think there are different ways of doing bone age. You have the Tanner-Whitehouse method, which looks at the epiphyseal scoring, which can be done on manually or by using apps now that are available. You have the conventional Grulich and Pyle Atlas, which is based on American standards, which help you assess bone age by comparing with the atlas. And you have the new Gilson's and Ratib Atlas, which looks into, again, an atlas-based method, which looks into the comparison of the image of the hand and the specific epiphyses. All the three methods are almost equivalent of each other. Every method has its own pros and cons. But remember, none of these are based on an Indian population, you know, that you really have in mind. But this is one study which we did, which said that the Tanner-Whitehouse 3 method is supposed to be the most useful in the assessment of bone age and more accurate in terms of the Indian population. So I think the method you are comfortable with, you would prefer to use. If feasible, one should prefer to use the Tanner-Whitehouse 3 method.
Correct. So this is the publication which has come from none other than Dr. Hemchand, who is present here, and Kadilkar and Mrs. Kadilkar and the other students of his. And they have actually looked at all the three methods of doing the bone age, and they've tried to interpret and they've come to the conclusion that the Tanner Whitehouse method is as good as the other two, but easier to use. Is that so, Dr. Imjan?
Yes, you have mobile applications that are available on
Correct.
Play Store, which are very user friendly. All you need to do is go with the app. It will teach you and handhold you step by step and help you arrive at an accurate bone age assessment, which can use in making diagnosis.
Okay, we have another at the most 10 minutes to go. So we'll quickly go through something which we have not touched, Dr. Hemchan. That there are growth charts which we have spoken about the normal children. But there are children who have some problem and their growth may be genetically different from normal, and yet they may be growing normally. So they always look short as compared to a child who is without that particular syndrome. So first talk is the achondroplasia. We have any Indian charts, or which chart we use for achondroplasia?
See, achondroplasia is a very important condition where growth monitoring is very important at a pediatrician level. So
Especially head
you don't have
circumference.
specific growth charts for Indian achondroplasia children, but this is the growth chart that is recommended for use in children with achondroplasia. You would specifically have to look at the head circumference every 3 months in the initial 2 years and 6 monthly thereafter because of the risk of hydrocephalus. So I
Correct.
think head
Correct.
circumference monitoring is extremely important. Number two is measurement of weight. Because these children are prone for obesity and metabolic syndrome, weight monitoring is extremely important at a pediatrician level in children with achondroplasia. And third
Perfect.
important monitoring is height. All of us know very well children with achondroplasia have compromised height. There are a lot of newer avenues of treatment that are being available and being explored. The identification of these children and explaining to them the possible treatment options, like you have the CNP analogs, vosoritide, etc., which are being used in some centers, which can be offered to these children. So measurement of head circumference, weight, and height are extremely important in children with achondroplasia.
So you have this chart which actually give you the weight percentile, length, and the head circumference for the first 4 years, 0 to 48 months, and then 4 to 20 years for achondroplasia. This is for the males. You have the similar chart for female. You also have charts for them for BMI, waist circumference, sitting height to height ratio, arm span, length, SILL, surveillance for head circumference, neurological function, foot length, plus all these similar charts for the girls. So very extensive charts are available. Of course, this is not for general pediatrician, but remember, if you have a achondroplasia, when you refer them, this is what the endocrinologist will do by using this particular chart. All right, Dr. Shalmi, what about Down syndrome? Why they need different charts?
So I think every genetic syndrome child will grow a bit differently from the normal population. So
Okay.
therefore, they have to be plotted on their disease-specific growth charts. Now, here on the growth chart of a Down syndrome, if a child starts having faltering, then we know some new thing is happening inside the child, right? So I think that is the most important thing why we have to put them on their particular chart.
Very good.
I mean, I'll just say that. So here we have got 2 to 20 years growth charts, both weight, height, and head circumference. Again, blue for the boys and pink for the girls. And again, we have
Correct.
got the smaller growth charts also, which are going to monitor these same parameters.
Perfect. So when the
Especially
height
development
falls,
of hypothyroidism, you can pick up on the growth
exactly. So when
chart.
the height
Yes,
falters, you will be worried that you haven't checked the thyroid levels, which you should do periodically because they may become
correct.
hypothyroid even at a later age, or a cardiac issue which is completely missed out because the child was
Yes.
not cyanotic and so on and so forth. So we have similar charts for 0 to 36 months as for 2 to 20, weight, length, height, head circumference, weight for length, and all these charts for girls in pink color. All right. Next, Dr. Hemchandra, what are these charts?
I think children, as ma'am, Dr. Shalbi mentioned, every syndrome, most of the
Yes.
syndromes, it's very important that the syndrome specific chart be used. In girls with Turner syndrome, you have Indian
Correct.
charts for girls with Turner syndrome. The
Mhm.
use of these charts, as mentioned in the previous case, very
Mhm.
helpful in identification of illnesses peculiar to the syndromic state.
Correct.
Children with Turner syndrome are prone to develop celiac disease, they are prone to develop hypothyroidism, they are prone to develop diabetes. These conditions can be identified early if you plot these children on the Turner syndrome charts. And if you give them growth promoting treatment, you can
Correct.
find the response to treatment on these Turner syndrome charts, as well as identification of obesity early. They are prone for obesity, metabolic syndrome. So use of syndrome specific charts are very important, especially in Turner syndrome.
Correct. So we'll come to that growth hormone treatment as the last slide. Before that, Dr. Alok, what so far we showed you these Fenton's charts for preterm babies. So what is
Yeah.
this? I mean, boys and girls, and when does the catch up happen generally in the
Yeah.
children?
So Fenton's chart has been used for a long time now for preterms. So
Mm-hmm.
preterm babies are supposed to be intrauterine, but they were born early. So there's an entity called as extrauterine growth retardation as well, which can be monitored on these charts. You would want to monitor it till 40 weeks, and after 40 weeks, you would want to monitor it in conjunction with the WHO chart. You would continue to monitor this up to 50 weeks and then move on to the WHO chart. But we've moved on to using the intergrowth 21st charts now on.
Okay, so either you or Dr. Hemchand,
Dr. Hemchand,
can you little talk about what are the intergrowth 21 charts for preterm babies?
I think the intergrowth 21 charts are nothing but similar to WHO charts for children 0 to 5 years of age. Same concept. Prescriptive growth. All the factors that are going to constrain the growth have been taken into account, and you have intergrowth 21 at birth charts which are available for preterm babies, help you to make a proper classification of these babies as AGA, SGA or LGA, which is very important in the long-term management of this child. Along with this, they have also given intergrowth 21 preterm follow-up charts for you to monitor the growth of these babies when they are admitted in the NICU, to see the response of your treatment and management in the NICU as well. So both these charts must be used in the specific situations and growth abnormalities be identified. They are prescriptive and analogous to WHO.
Correct. So there are 5 lines again: 3rd, 10th, 58th, 19th, 97th centile, boys and girls. So this is for the weight, this is for the length, and this is for the head circumference. So these charts are available, and as Dr. Alok and Dr. Hemchand have mentioned, then we should stop using Fenton charts and maybe move to the intergrowth 21 chart. These are downloadable, easily available from this prescription. So last question, what is this Brosilos tape? I read this paper which is ahead of publication by Dr. Vaman Khadilkar, and one of his student is Dr. Vijay Yevle's son, who is doing endocrinology at Pune with him. And this is the paper which says that the Indian version of this Brosilos tape to calculate weight for emergency use, where you cannot weigh a sick child, to calculate the doses of the drug which are to be given importantly, and the fluid which is required for, like, say, child comes in shock, etc. So what is this Brosilos tape, and how has that been Indianized by this study?
See, I think this is a tool that is useful for emergency care physicians. In advanced life support tape, so-called it is named, it is color-coded into 9 different colors, stratified for height and weight. These color coding has been done based on the Indian Academy of Pediatrics data. All you need to do is take this tape and measure it and keep it with the child, and see which color the height of this child falls into, and use that particular weight of the child to calculate fluids, administer emergency drugs in the emergency room.
So what do you measure with this tape? I mean, what is this?
You keep it beside, you basically keep it beside the child, and you make a rough estimation of the height of this child, the equivalent weight of the on the basis of the height, and use that weight to administer emergency drugs. So you may not be able to weigh the child in emergency situations, so you may have to give an emergency rescue drugs. So this tape would be very much useful.
So you take the length or the height, whatever. Usually height will not be possible in a sick child. So the length, and then you see the length falls into which of this green, from gray to green, and then you have the corresponding weight which is given up above, and you take that is the weight of the child. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That would be correct.
So just to give you an example, you have a sick baby who is dengue, shock, 12-year-old boy. You take his rough length is 140. That means in a green, so he must be around 35 kilos. So everything you give as per 35 kilo, and you will be generally right in doing so. So this is a great tape that is available. Is that commercially available, Dr. Hemchand?
No, I think there is it's an ahead of, as you said rightly, it's ahead of print publications. All that will come in the days to come.
No, so that is validation is ahead of, but this Brosilos tape is available.
See, I think they have not commented about that in the paper. So I think we have to wait for more answers.
All right, fine. Okay, so this for the future, maybe very near future, the tape may be available. All right. Is there any app, Dr. Shalmi, for the pediatrician who are very busy, as to plot these growth charts, including mid-parental obesity, basic charts, in a quick,
so
in a jiffy?
Sir, IAP has made this app, and you can easily download it from both the Android and the Apple phones, and just by plotting, I mean, just entering the basic information, it gives you those charts, and you can monitor the child also. So, frequent follow-up measurements can also be put into it, and you can get a nice graph out of it.
Perfect.
And even the parents can also use it.
Correct. So this is the IAP growth chart application which you install. Is available both on the Apple as well as on the Android. And when you first start, it will ask you, is it a new child or an existing child? You say new child, and then you'll ask you the child is a boy or a girl, exact age, or you give the date of birth. You give his weight, his height in kgs and centimeter, head circumference for a small child. You give parents' height, father, mother, and then you ask what you want: height for age, weight for age, or BMI. You ask for BMI. The BMI will come plotted automatically for you. You ask for height for age, it will come plotted automatically for you. And you ask for weight for age, it will come plotted. So in one visual, you can make out this child is growing well, both in height and weight, but weight is a little more. So he's above the 17th centile for the BMI, and you should be a little worried about he become obese. So this is how you use. And if you have stored this data as an existing child, next time when you do, it will give you the next reading, which is plotted next to this, and you can keep on doing that. And you can even email this and send it to parents or to your software that you're using, so that it becomes easy for you to monitor the child. All right. Last question. Growth hormone therapy. Everyone talks about it. Labeled indication, Dr.
Yeah,
Shalmi.
indications.
Okay, Alok. Labeled indication.
Indications. So most common is growth hormone deficiency to begin with.
Correct.
Other indications are Turner syndrome, Noonan syndrome, SGA babies who have not caught up, Prader-Willi syndrome, idiopathic short stature,
So
chronic
which
renal
of these are labeled
insufficiency.
and which of these are off
These
label?
are
All
these are all
labels, sir.
labeled. These
Okay,
are all
off
labeled.
label, off
These are all
label,
labeled.
off label and soft indications, Dr. Shalmi.
So off-label, anybody who is growing below the genetic potential or growing below the target height, you have ruled out all the other known causes of short stature. You
Correct.
can give them a trial of growth hormone unless there are any contraindications.
So suppose there is a child growing in the mid-parental range, but the mid-parental range itself is much below the third centile. They want a little taller child, maybe even an inch or two more, and they sometimes ask, I can afford, can I use growth hormone therapy?
So it's not again about affordability only, but yes, familial short stature now as a part of idiopathic short stature is an indication of growth hormone therapy. But when we start growth hormone in these kids, we need to make them understand that they are not growth hormone deficient, but just genetically short. So we may need to give them growth hormone for
Higher
longer
dose.
periods of time
And
with a
higher
moderate
dose?
benefit.
Okay. And like say children with thalassemia who have again a growth potential much lower than because of the chronic anemia, can they
So, sir, we
be
have been using sometimes growth hormone in our kids of rickets who after
correct?
healing of rickets have not have a catch-up growth. Our
Okay.
kids of osteogenesis imperfecta has helped in improve the bone mineral density. Our kids of hypothyroidism who after giving thyroxine still lag behind.
Okay,
So, you
fine.
know, like these are all kind of off-label indications.
All right, Dr. Hemchand, last two questions to you. Contraindications, absolute contraindication.
Absolute contraindication is epiphyseal fusion. When the bone
Okay.
age is beyond 14 years in girls and 16 years in boys, there is no role for growth
Correct.
hormone. And post-cancer, for the
Yes.
first 2 years of life, you have to be very careful. And chromosomal breakage syndrome, you have to be
Correct.
very careful. And very
Okay.
importantly, children who have previous complications, you would definitely have to be very careful
Okay.
because of the recurrence of these complications.
Okay, so
Oh,
when do you
yes, yes.
start in a given indication, Dr. Hemchand? One liner, we are
Let's
running
see,
out of time.
when do you start? When the oxological criteria are satisfied, you would have to start them on.
No, at what age, what I mean?
See, the age of starting growth hormone treatment depends on the indication. If you're looking at a child with growth hormone deficiency, 3 years is the textbook recommendation when you would be able to start them.
Okay.
But I think on a practical note, one could wait up to 5 years of age because that is the age where the Indian Academy of Pediatrics chart come into picture. So you have a
Correct.
more realistic understanding of the growth of the child. But having said that, if you have a GHT, even in a newborn with hypoglycemia, you can start. So I
How
think
long you continue?
see when the child reaches a height acceptable for the population
Okay.
and for the family.
And the cost generally is what?
See, the cost generally depends on the weight of the child, the brand you use, whether you use a biosimilar or an innovator molecule, you use a daily molecule or a weekly molecule.
So biosimilar for a say 20 kilo child or a 30 kilo child or per 10 kg child, like
See,
Around 12 to 14,000 per month.
per
So
month.
For
per
20
unit,
kgs.
per unit costs about 150 rupees
Okay.
in biosimilar.
All right. But I think no pediatrician should indulge into treating a child with the growth hormone therapy without intervention from an endocrinologist. All right. Last comment and message from each expert. Dr. Alok, what have we learned today? What would you give as a message to the pediatrician?
as a pediatrician, even if everybody has understood the use of growth chart, it is very important to actually put it into practice, because you will be surprised to see how many cases are being underdiagnosed because of not using a growth chart and
Okay,
not measuring growth velocity. So never
perfect,
forget growth velocity.
perfect. Dr. Shalmi?
So I think we should always pay heed to the mother's complaints, like the family's complaint. One common misconception that is passed on from us to them is that the child can keep growing until the age of 18 and 16. That is not the case anymore. So any
Anymore.
complaints of short stature has to be addressed. At least put the child on growth monitoring.
Perfect. Dr. Emchen?
I think only two messages. I think we have the only growth chart, probably only country where we require no calculations in the growth chart. We don't need to calculate BMI, we don't need to calculate mid-parental height. Growth chart,
Correct.
growth plotting has been made so easy by
So
the Indian
easy.
Academy of Pediatrics, so that we use and identify more children with growth abnormalities. And number two, adapt technology into your life. I think use of the apps in terms of the IAP growth chart app, the Bone Age app, etc., are very useful tools to make your life easy. The IAP has done a wonderful job in to ease the life of all pediatricians. Please adapt technology into your life.
Perfect. So I think I thank all of you for really sparing time and giving us such vast knowledge. Uh, Fantastic. I mean, I really enjoyed this session moderating. Dr. Ramesh, please
Yes,
wind up.
yeah. Nitin bhai, first of all, let me thank you profusely because you prepared, questions and the presentation in such a way that all practicing pediatricians would really, really be benefited. Uh, I thank all three eminent faculties, Dr. Shalmi Mehta, Dr. Alok, and Dr. Hemchand, for their time and consideration for our group and Surendranagar District Pediatric Academic Training. And I thank our viewers for attending this program. After 48 hours, we'll come out with a recording link. So in case of anyone who has missed, can view and can share, especially amongst the residents, because they'll find it very useful. And finally, thank you, Zydus, for giving us this platform. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So next month
you
is
so much.
Diwali, so we are not very sure which is the date which we will pick up, because people will be out vacationing and things like that. So normally each of these webinar we announce the next webinar, but please hold on another 1 week. We will be able to finalize the date, and then accordingly we will put to what the topic will be and which date. But we have changed from Thursdays to Fridays because there were
Yes.
major clashes on Thursday with some other important activities. So at the request of a lot of people, we have now made it a permanent fixture to do it from 9 to 10:30 on Friday. So please hold on for the next announcement. Until then, enjoy this session online for those who have missed, and for those who have seen today but have want to see again and again to learn it actually. And I would say unless you see 3 to 4 times, you will not be actually start practicing in your day-to-day practice. Please do it, because as I said, if you chart the growth of the child, it helps you to grow your own practice. Well, thank you very much and good night, everyone.
Happy Dashera to everybody.
Happy Dashera.
Yes,
Yes,
happy
that's
Dashera. Thank
Right.
you. Good night,
Yes,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye
Yes.
bye. Bye bye.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. We are offline now.
All right. Thank you. Chalo,
Thank
Ramesh
you.
bhai.
Nitin,